Hare Krishna. It's a big mic. Jaya Radha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Gunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Shri Radha Madhava ki jai. Jaya Om Vishnupai Pramangsa Privrajikacharya Shachara Shata Shishimaz Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jaya Om Vishnupai Pramangsa Privrajikacharya Shachara Shata Shishimaz Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada ki jai. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadvip Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Gangamai ki jai. Yamunamai ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So I think we're on text 20, right? Okay. So this is prose, so I just chant myself, right?
If you want to.
Okay, yes, please.
Seva puna nindra jagara grihitondhe tamasi magna shunyaranya ivashete nanyat kinchana veda shaba ivapa viddaha.
Shukadev Goswami continued speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, "My dear king, sleeping is exactly like a python. Those who wander in the forest of material life are always devoured by the python of sleep. Being bitten by this python, they always remain in the darkness of ignorance. They are like dead bodies thrown in a distant forest. Thus, the conditioned souls cannot understand what is going on in life." Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Material life means being fully absorbed in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Out of these, sleep is taken very seriously. While asleep, one completely forgets the object of life and what to do. For spiritual realization, one should try to avoid sleep as much as possible. The Goswamis of Vrindavana practically did not sleep at all. Of course, they slept some, for the body requires sleep, but they slept only about 2 hours, and sometimes not even that. They always engaged in spiritual cultivation. Nidrahara viharakari vijito. Following in the footsteps of the Goswamis, we should try to reduce sleeping, eating, mating, and defending. Hare Krishna. It's pretty nice instructions for us. So I just wanted to share some words of appreciation first before speaking, because we have very nice Vaishnavas here, senior devotees, and I really appreciate you are all my heroes. And actually, before deciding to come here, one of my reasons was it's kind of a historic place for me, because this was the first temple that I stayed at and actually got a taste for the brotherhood life of brahmachari life. And I met Dravida Prabhu, was the first sadhu, saintly person I met, and also Badri Narayan Swami, His Holiness Badri Narayan Swami I met, and he gave me instruction and chastised me also, which was really great. This was, I think it was July 2014. And it's so nice to see so many devotees that are still here, and it's inspiring to see so many steady devotees, like Balaram Prabhu is one of the devotees I met here, and Janardana Prabhu is here, and of course the other senior Vaishnavas. So thank you all for letting me be here, and it's amazing just reflecting on what my consciousness was like then, because this is my first time visiting since, and now I was just a new idealistic bhakta at that time. So this is a very interesting, verse. I think is Krishna's arrangement for me to purify myself to understand and speak about this concept of sleep, particularly, which the verse kind of highlights on this ajata, what is it? The Sanskrit of python of sleep, nidra ajagara, by the python of deep sleep. So Srila Prabhupada focuses on the purport in the first sentence that material life means this being fully absorbed in eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So this is basically animal civilization. This isn't actually real civilization. And these four activities, practically everybody in material life is trying to max these out, right? Or one of them, or many of them, or whatever. We see there's so much strife in the world is caused by these four principles. Eating, so many animals are being slaughtered every day. I don't know what the number is, but it's really inconceivable. Huh? What was that? Millions every day? It's crazy. Sleeping, people are sleeping, many hours. Actually, Prabhupada says the next sentence says, sleep is taken very seriously. And mating, of course, we know that, we're here in Pacific Beach, and, it's quite a place of material enjoyment for that. And also defending, right? We're hearing about this conflict in Russia and Ukraine and, all various conflicts in the world, just basically out of defense. So these are animalistic propensities. The animals are just involved in these activities. And so we see that human civilization is basically just on the animal platform. And so what is amazing is when we hear this knowledge from Srila Prabhupada and the Parampara, Prabhupada really stresses this point. Human life is meant for self-realization. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. That the first step in self-realization is to inquire into the absolute truth. Try to understand, why is there suffering in this world? Who am I? What is my purpose in life? So this is actually human civilization, trying to understand these points and ultimately coming to the Vedic knowledge, the Vedic paradigm, and understanding what the Vedas say. So while I was studying for this verse and purport, Srila Prabhupada was speaking about sleep, and this is a very formidable enemy to conquer. Of course, all of these are actually, but sleep was the theme today, so we'll speak particularly on sleep, mostly on just particularly like how it can cause difficulties in spiritual life and the material aspect of it. So this sleep is taken very seriously, and Prabhupada said he was speaking one time in I think it was a conversation, I don't remember who it was, but he was speaking like about how people sleep about 10 to 12 hours. And they waste, if you sleep 10 to 12 hours, like you say 12 hours, there's 24 hours in a day. So you basically sleep for 6 months out of the year. And he said, basically we were all like Kumbhakarnas, because Kumbhakarna was the brother of Ravana. And he would sleep for 6 months, and he would be awake for 6 months. So he's saying, Prabhupada was saying, well, actually, we're more or less like Kumbhakarnas. I thought that was pretty funny. So actually, I was, when I grew up, one of my relatives actually, God bless her heart, she would sleep for many hours every day at night, go to bed early, sleep until work. I don't know what time, like 7 o'clock, got up, and then come home from work and just sleep for many hours, take naps, and I was thinking, like, there's something wrong with this, and like every time I went to my father's house, like the whole mood was like dark, the lights were dark and everything was dark, and there was just this mood of sleep or like, hang out inside, and I was thinking, there's just something, something wrong's about this, maybe I was too passionate to understand, what was going on. But anyway, the point is, the materialists, they find sleep as a luxury, Srila Prabhupada says. A luxury in the sense that if they can get it, which can be very difficult for a materialist, because they're so disturbed all the time by so many problems in life, So many materialists turn towards sleeping pills, or I used to take, melatonin, or various other, maybe harder, more intense sleeping pills, just so they can get a night's rest, so the mind can be peaceful. Oh yes, this is good. This is nice. It is funny, one senior devotee, but he's been in the movement for many years, but he just got initiated recently at our temple, and we're doing a lot of temple renovations. And the building is very old. I don't know how, maybe 200 years when the foundation was set. I don't know how old the walls are, but basically, if you're really trying to do a renovation, like everywhere you look, you'll see some issue with the building. And he's a perfectionist, an artist and an engineer, so he sees things and he's, oh, we have to tear this out, tear that out, so we're doing all these things. And I was telling him, I was saying, Prabhu, this is intense. Like, there's so many problems. I don't need any more problems today, because every day he looks over the building and he sees what's going on, and he comes to me and says, okay, this is what we have to do today. And I'm like, Prabhu, no more problems today, no more problems. And he was like, just go to sleep then. Just sleep. He said it in a joking way. Like, just sleep. And there's some deep truth in that, right? Because when we sleep, Prabhupada says here, we just forget what to do, in general. There may be instances, lucid dreaming and all these things. But in general, our experience in sleep is simply out of ignorance. We experience our consciousness, a sleeping consciousness of the subtle bodies going, different places. And we're basically don't understand who we are in a dream, right? Or we're so attached to the dream. There may be, in the analogy example is given, there may be some tiger in the dream or some ferocious animal coming after us, and we're, freaking out. And it actually has a deep effect on us even after, right? We may still think, oh, the tiger's still there. But actually, there was no tiger. It was just a sleeping consciousness. So sleep is a state of ignorance. And even if we have things in our dreams that are like somewhat spiritual or, give us lessons or something, still that we don't actually know like how much it's being influenced by the modes of nature. Just like Prabhupada gives the example of a golden mountain. So we may see a mountain, and here there's mountains in this area, or hills. I don't know what exactly they're called, but that's the mountains here. So we see a mountain and we see gold somewhere, And then, so when we dream, we may see a golden mountain, but it actually has no real existence in our, at least blunt material sense perception. And we, of course, know there's Mount Meru, but only select few can see them. Right? So the point is that dreaming and sleep, these things influence us, our consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada actually spoke very strongly on this concept of sleep, that many times he would say that it's simply a waste of time, right? It's a waste of time in the sense that we want to engage in devotional service 24 hours a day. Just like Prabhupada quotes the verse, I just want to chant it because it's very purifying, from the 6 Goswamis. Sankhya purvaka namagana natibi kalavasani krito nidrahara viharakari vijito chatyanta dina chayo radha krishna guna smriter madhurima nandena samohito vande rupa sanatana rugo yugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. So the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavana, Srila Prabhupada mentions here that we should actually try to follow in their footsteps to reduce these animalistic propensities. And in this verse, it is spoken that they're always engaged in the service of Radha and Krishna. And they're bowing down in scheduled measurement, always chanting the holy names. And thus they utilize their valuable lives in executing these devotional activities. And they conquered, Vijito, they conquered over eating and sleeping by engagement in devotional service. So this is the reason why the concept is that we think of sleep as a waste of time, because we can't necessarily perform devotional service. So we want to perform devotional service 24 hours a day to utilize our human form of life, but during this time, maybe you can hear something and maybe that, will get in the consciousness and help us. But in general, like, we can't actually engage in devotional service. Maybe a little bit of manasa seva goes on. But for the most part, none. But of course, Prabhupada mentioned that it's not a waste of time in the sense that we have to have sleep, right? We have to have, not sleep really, we say, but we say rest. Because the body needs some rest from work, from activities to function properly. It's one of the solutions to a bad intelligence or a disturbed intelligence is to get proper rest, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the third canto. That if the function of the intelligence, it can't actually function sufficiently or properly if one doesn't get sufficient rest for it. So we have to keep our intelligence intact. Why? Because this is what's actually saving us from material existence, is bathing our intelligence in the Shastras, worshiping Krishna by our intelligence by studying Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures. And the intelligence is what can keep us propelling forward. One of my mentors says, you have to protect your intelligence at all times, because we just have to filter things through our intelligence, because the mind will say so many things. The urges of the body will be there. The mind's demands. It's just like waking up, right? There's this mystical thing that happens when you wake, when your alarm clock goes off in the morning, where the alarm clock goes off, and if you give your mind some seconds or milliseconds, the mind will say, well, why don't you just, a few more minutes, hit the snooze button. Or just, well, you stayed up a little late, and, you should probably, or the mind will say, so many things. It'll try to convince you that, okay, more sleep. Which actually may be needed, but I'm just making the point of, the rascal mind. And it may say that, but the intelligence has to kick in and say, no, I got to get up right now. I can take rest later or whatever. I got to chant my rounds. I got service, like that. So at least we wake up, by 4 a.m. and come from Mangal Arati. But we may have this experience. And then many times when that happens, like to me, when I hit the snooze button, then I may even miss the 4 a.m. or, I may be late to Mangal Arati or something. So this is how powerful sleep is. At that time, before you went to bed, you may be thinking, you may have mapped it out with intelligence. Okay, I'll sleep now. I'll get 6 hours of rest. I'll wake up at this time. My alarm clock goes off. Okay, good. And then once that time hits, it's like you just forgot your whole plan, and you may take a little more extra rest. So Prabhupada gave some instructions about sleep. He mentioned that 6 or 7 hours is basically sufficient. And, 6 at night, 1 during the day is pretty much sufficient. But he also, when devotees would sleep in class, he didn't like that very much. So sometimes he would say that, okay, just, take as much rest as you need, if it's more, so you don't doze off in class or during japa or something. So in general, we have to see how much we actually need, and that can always be checked in with our senior devotees and authorities to help us, guide us in our more beginning stages on trying to understand how we can balance these, because Krishna mentions yukta hara viharasya, yukta chestasya karmasu, yukta swapna vibodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha, that balancing these, eating, recreation, work, then will mitigate the miseries of material life. And the verse before that, I don't remember the Sanskrit, but basically that, one can actually be successful if one doesn't sleep too much or sleep too little, eat too much or eat too less. So it's this balancing game that we have to play and try to introspect and see how we can always improve our devotional service. So those are some points about the challenges that we face in regards to sleep. And Prabhupada says for spiritual realization we should avoid sleep as much as possible. And we hear many examples of devotees that minimize sleep to the utmost. And we know examples, in the past and even today, many devotees are conquering over this Gudakesha, right? That Krishna calls Arjuna Gudakesha, the conqueror of sleep. So sleep can also mean the darkness or ignorance too. So we have to conquer over that. Because sleep brings this, the act of sleep brings this, ignorance-like state. So this darkness of ignorance has to be conquered by the spiritual master opening our eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Then we can conquer over the darkness of ignorance. And, it was interesting. Prabhupada made this point about even like materialistic people. He said, great men. He was given a lecture on Bhaktivinoda Thakur Appearance Day, and he was speaking about how Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I think he said he slept from 12 to 9 to, what was it? He said he slept for 5 hours a night. He woke up at 12, so he went to bed at 7 and woke up at 12. And he was doing so many activities and services, family life, and as a magistrate, and just inconceivable amount of service, writing books, composing songs and poetry. So he's speaking about Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and then he was mentioning that actually, all great men, so to speak, they don't sleep very much. And he gave the example of Napoleon. Napoleon slept 1 or 2 hours a night. Of course, may not be really considered a great man in our books, but we see him. According to a materialistic society, great men sleep very less. Also, for more contemporary, what I heard, Kobe Bryant was a famous basketball star, and he would sleep. He would wake up at 3 every morning, and he would wake up at 3 and meditate, and then he would do training. And he said, if you do it like this, and you'll surpass all other basketball players in a few years or something, right? So my point is that even materialistic people cannot sleep very much, but they're doing it for the wrong reason. They may come to good realizations, like this basketball player would say. He kind of was becoming more conscious after this meditation, after this regulation, and was becoming a little bit more, in the mode of goodness, and coming to realizations like, it's not just a game of basketball, but it's this game of life, like helping people and like that. So they come to these kind of realizations, but not ultimately, of course, the highest. So they can gain, by their austerity, they can gain some power or some opulence, right? By this austerity of giving up sleep, and can do many things. So for us in devotional service, it is also like that we can become a great man or a person or a devotee, if we can conquer this animalistic propensity of sleep, and then we can max out our devotional service. So Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission, right, is to go out and chant the holy names. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings this very beautiful song. Jeev Jago, Gaura Chandra Bole, Kotanija, Jayo Maya, Pishachira Kore. So Lord Chaitanya would go out and wake up, sleeping souls, wake up, sleeping souls. You're sleeping on the witch of the lap called Maya. And he would induce them to please chant their holy names. This is the medicine you need for getting out of the darkness of ignorance and perfecting your lives, attaining that Krishna prema, this highest treasure. So Lord Chaitanya. So we're also in the mood of Lord Chaitanya. We go out and preach Krishna consciousness and try to wake people up in the darkness of ignorance. We were me and my friend, Bhakti Nate, back in Kansas City during the Christmas marathon. We went to a town that was close to our 40 minutes away. And on our way back, we decided to stop by Walmart and distribute books and pick up some groceries. And there was a worker there. We were checking out, and she was just coming on her shift. And I was paying the cash register for groceries and other practical things. And he was speaking to this lady, this elderly lady, and he asked her if she liked to read. She said, "No, not so much. I don't have time." But anyway, he went over and spoke to her, gave her Science of Self-Realization. She took it, gave it a nice donation. And after I ended my transaction, I went to them, and she was speaking about her life a little bit, how basically she just works all the time. Like she works many long shifts. Like we were there at 8 o'clock at night, and she said, I started early this morning, 8 a.m. something. She said, I work 6 days a week or something like that. It's just long shifts, Carly's long shifts. And she was saying, and basically on my time off, I just sleep. I don't have time for anything else. I just sleep. And we were both just like, that is horrible. I mean, to live life like that, just work like anything and sleep. Prabhupada made this comment, some purport I read or conversation. He was saying that it's not like we should just live life like, okay, let's just eat, drink, sleep, and someday die like cats and dogs. This is basically what is happening in our modern materialistic civilization, is dying like cats and dogs, eating, sleeping, mating, defending, just focusing on this. And in our culture, like Laguna Beach, we saw, Mars was talking about yesterday, Laguna Beach was a place of opulence, but basically the same things are going on there. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending, but just in a more polished way, right? Maybe a cat is sleeping, on a chair outside, or, on the ground. But then these people are sleeping, with the ocean view, waking up to the light coming through the window, and sleeping like that, or, defending. So anyway, we're doing all these things in a polished way. In our present civilization, at least, we're trying to max that out. But we see, and nobody's actually happy. There's sufficient. In America, Prabhupada said, in America there's sufficient eating, sufficient sleeping, sufficient mating, sufficient defending, but these people are actually not happy, and they're coming to Krishna consciousness and taking it seriously. Why? Because there's no happiness in these things, actually. It's all on the material platform. But coming to Krishna consciousness on the spiritual platform, then there's actually happiness. We can experience our Satchit Ananda, natural state of being or consciousness. So these are some points that I wanted to share. There's also this last point I read earlier this morning, that there's a letter to a devotee named Rudra, and Prabhupada said, at this stage, if we do not take sufficient rest, we shall fall ill. So we should take rest enough to get in good health, to keep in good health. So it is a balancing act. We have to see that we have to utilize this rest to get it sufficiently so that we could perform our duties nicely for Krishna. And in that way, we can actually make use of the best use of a bad bargain, because this material body is simply ignorance. So we have to make use of a bad bargain and try to improve in these categories of sleeping, eating, mating, defending, trying to reduce gradually, and thus we can conquer over these enemies, and not just for material reasons, but so that we can max out our devotional service and spiritual advancement. It's the real aim of human life, the ultimate, goal in life. And in the Bhagavatam mentions that every endeavor actually should be to move towards that, or progress towards realization of the absolute truth. This is the goal of human existence. So these are some points. Prabhu said I have to go till 30 and then ask for questions. Okay. Are there any comments or questions from the devotees, or maybe we'd love to hear some realizations from the senior devotees.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, there is one person waiting in the Zoom.
For a
I
question.
just have a few, a few comments. That Tamal Krishna Goswami was talking with Srila Prabhupada about sleeping and specific, like reducing it. And then he was asking him pretty much, how do you do it? How do you reduce your sleep? And then Srila Prabhupada said, well, you have to practice. Which is, it's a good point, because without practicing something, you know, how are we supposed to ever become good at it? You have to practice. And Tamal Krishna Goswami was given an example of his own disciple. There was this elderly Indian, you know, by ethnicity, you know, devotee, and very, actually, I think you probably remember him, Vijay Prabhu. He lived in LA for a while, Vidura. Anyway, yeah, Vidura and Manjari. So he lived across the street, and it's quite elderly, so. And he wasn't so accustomed to waking up like really early, but he had to wake up really early. And the reason being because he was just so elderly, it took him so long to get ready. So he had to wake up very early and get ready and, you know, go over for Mangalarti in the morning. And Maharaj was saying how he just wasn't accustomed to that. So, and then he was walking over there really early in the morning. It was dark. He said he fell down a few times and, you know, hurt him. So, but he was a good example because he was determined, you know, to do it. So it seems that if we just try to, a lot of it requires kind of like fighting it, because there's one thing like, okay, I feel sleepy, okay, let me surrender to it. Let me just, like, for example, during the morning program, it's like, oh man, I'm like really tired. Like, I could like go to sleep right now and just like stay asleep for hours. I'm like dead tired. I'm half dead, but so, all right, let me just surrender to it, you know, just like sleep. That's one option, right? But if we fight through it, if we just fight, fight, you know, stand up, fight, whatever, put water on our face, drink water, do jumping jacks, whatever. I'm just joking. Then we see that over time we become more strong and it becomes easier to stay awake. So anyways, it's interesting, this idea of practice. So that's a long comment. And a short comment was, my mother was working she's retired now, but she was working someplace, and, you know, they get together and they have like a group or like work meetings, and where they discuss with each other certain things. And so one of the things that they did is they had like tags, and then specifically what they were doing is everyone would write their passion, right? So some people, like, you know, have like a tag on their shirt that says my passion, Facebook, or, you know, Instagram, whatever. And then one young girl, my mother was commenting, she was young and, you know, attractive by material standards, right? And she had this pin there, and my mother looked and she said, and my mother said that it said passion. What's your passion? And she looked and it said sleep, you know. My mother was thinking, sleep? I was like, you're young, attractive, there's so many things to do, like, you know, there's a lot to do, even, yeah, just whatever, going here, going there, and just sleep. So anyways, it's an interesting thing. But just comment.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's really nice.
Just one real quick comment about the Dura. I used to spend more time in LA because my central office is there, and we had to produce a book. I'd spend sometimes a month at a time. So I remember Vidura very well. He had a son, I think, who also became a devotee. Yeah. So Vidura, I think it was one of his first times of doing Mangalarti. So he was out there doing Mangalarti, and in LA, those who haven't seen, they have this. I don't know if they still do it, but they had, rather than just the 5, they had these sticks I don't know, maybe 12 of them or whatever, maybe it has to be an even number. Wicks, yeah, for the offering of the lamps. And very elaborate, you know, take a while to light them up and then so the big thing. So he did that for all three altars. I happened to be standing in front of Gaura Nitai's altar. You heard this before? So he finished the offering, you know, like Prabhupada and everything, but instead of giving it out, he put it back down on the next to the wall. And right above that was the chamara pan hanging. And I said, I said, my God, it's going to catch on fire. So I jumped up on the altar and just took the lamp away, you know, and handed it out. I just remembered when you mentioned him. And that was one of the few times I've ever been on the altar in Dwarka. Because he was a little sleepy. Maybe it was the first time he was doing it, whatever. No. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you.
Vijay Prabhu?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. Prabhupada, he didn't like to sleep because, as you mentioned, there's no devotional service. So he told his servant when he would go to sleep, he would before he would go to sleep, he would say, "Now I'm going to waste time." And he mentioned that sometimes people could even need up to 8 hours. So we have different, you know, physical needs. You know, some devotees they can get by with 5, no problem.
Yeah.
And some if they don't have 8, it's like they're just like struggling. I know a very good friend, he's a good devotee, but yeah, he's got to have like 8 hours. So we all have different natures, you know, different bodies. But yeah, Prabhupada said that if you practice, you could decrease. And as you get older, also, you don't need as much sleep. Like when the babies, I think they sleep like 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
They got to sleep a lot. And then as you get older, and when people like in the 70s, 80s, you don't need to sleep as much.
Mm.
Yeah. Just a couple comments.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's good to look forward to in old age. I was just thinking one quick comment because I was realizing there's this, many of you may know about it, the Warped Tour, which was like a amazing era for book distribution. And, you know, we're traveling many hours a day to another show in a different city, going out in the hot sun every day almost, distributing many books. And like that was the first kind of sacrifice that I did, which really pushed me to give up this sleeping propensity, or try to at least, but it was very difficult. So my realization is, you know, going out on Sankirtan, especially book distribution, when you're actually meeting people, trying to convince them, there's a certain like energy that's required to connect with them, at least, you know, my realization. And so when you go out, you know, when I would go out and be tired, too tired, didn't get enough sleep, and just, you know, not enthusiastic. I remember this one time was such a blow to my false ego. I was tired, and I was approaching these, because the Warped Tour is like, you know, teenagers. So these people, they're excited to see the show. They're waiting in line, you know. They're there 4 hours before the show starts, waiting in line. And so they're, you know, everybody's hyped. They're on, you know, whatever, Monster drinks and different energy drinks, whatever, coffee. And so I approached these two ladies in line, and I was like, yeah, so these are yoga, meditation, you know, I was self-realization. You guys heard of stress before. And she just looked at me and was like, I can't remember what she said. She's like, you sound so enthusiastic. And I was like, oh, wow, that hurt. And so I left. I came back, and that this year there's this guy that was not a monk, but he was portraying himself like that. He was an author of this book. He traveled to India, studied in ashrams, was like this, you know, figure like that. And later, she had his book. He also went in line and sold his book. So she had his book. And I was like, what? My false ego was so hurt. It's like, I'm a monk and she didn't take my book, now she takes his book. Like, what is this? Of course, this is Prabhupada's books too. So after that, I was, I really took shelter of the holy name and tried to muster up, whatever energy I had, and somehow or other, just by continuing the service, after experiences like that, then, people started becoming interested, and I started to get into the rhythm of the service, and people were taking books. So, and even now, like these days, I try to go out. I'm trying to go out 3 times a week on book distribution, amidst my duties in my temple, and sometimes, my sleep isn't so regulated, so I go out and, people are looking at me strange. I'm trying to give them a book because I haven't got enough sleep, and then I realized, okay, I need to be more regulated. So this book distribution specifically is so helpful for balancing us out. And I'm sure Vijay Prabhu has a lot of deeper realizations about it, but I just wanted to share that for your pleasure, Prabhu.
Just because you were mentioning, yes, just because you were mentioning Bhaktivinoda Thakur's schedule, just to elaborate on that, because it was so amazing. He slept when he would sleep from 8 to 10, and then from 10 to 4 he would write, and then from 4 to 4:30 he would take 30 minutes of rest. So he would devote so much time to his sadhana, and to his writing, and like he would get only 2.5 hours of sleep, and it wasn't even consecutive, And then what to speak of all of his, his court duties and whatnot, and so so amazing. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's schedule is such an example for us.
Thank you, Prabhu. Just to, it's 35 or weeks. Do we still go? Okay. 10 to 9? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Oh yeah, there was someone on Zoom. Does that mean they have a question?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay.
Yes, Krishna Bhagavan.
We're gonna do
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. We're being encouraged to have the temple room devotees first, so we can get to you, I think, after this comment by Bhakta, or question by Bhakta Alex.
Yes, I
Sorry,
can wait,
Prabhu.
no problem.
Sorry, Prabhu.
So you were saying that, we're supposed to try to minimize sleep, but then you also said that Prabhupada, he said that you should get sufficient sleep. If you're falling asleep while you're chanting japa or something, you probably need more sleep. But I know even from experience, sometimes you just, like laziness can feel, you can feel tired and groggy just from being lazy. So how do you know when you actually need more sleep, or your just mind is just telling you, like, you need more sleep, because it wants, it wants to sleep. So that was my question. Yeah.
Any of the senior devotees?
Yeah, that was a question. So how do you know when actually your mind's tricking you, or when you actually need more sleep?
Any of the senior devotees like to answer the question?
I mean, one thing is you usually get into a certain rhythm of sleep. And if you know that you didn't get the usual amount of sleep, or it was Sunday night and you had, 5 too many pakoras and a big bunch of halva, that's probably the cause. So there's a way of analyzing, when you get. But I wanted to add, there's also one thing. If you read the Madhurya Kadambini, you'll find that there's something that he gives obstacles. It's very instructive. And one of the obstacles is laya. And that's not the ordinary, that you didn't get enough sleep. It's that when you're chanting Hare Krishna, or you're hearing any Krishna Katha, that your mind is shutting down and you feel sleepy. And this is our friend Saul here just pointed to himself. I didn't pick him out. But he's developed a technique now for staying awake during japa. Right, Saul? That technique is Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. And it works, right? And we're all adjusting to it in the temple room. But there is something called laya that, and then on the other side, when you become, a little more advanced, the chanting and everything keeps you awake because you're really eager to hear, so that helps to stay up. And it works like that.
Actually, when we came to Tucson, all the devotees in the Tucson temple, like, they were talking about it a little bit. Like, yeah, there was some interesting chanting going on in the Tucson temple. Just to add that comment about Bhakti Saul, when he came to Tucson, to the Tucson temple, all the Tucson devotees, they were talking a little bit, and they were like, yeah, there was some interesting chanting happening, in the temple. So everyone had to get used to Bhakti Saul's unique chanting style. It's pretty funny that you brought that up.
Thank you for your determination, Prabhu.
Just have one quick comment. You mentioned about sleeping. It has like a effect even after sleep. And remember, when I was young, I had a dream that I had like a pile of money and I hid it under my pillow. And when I woke up, I was like, damn, I have money under my pillow. And I woke up and I looked and I was like, and that's when I realized it was a dream, and I was disappointed.
Disappointed? You said you were disappointed? Yeah, actually, I feel very blessed because I'm with two devotees now, staying here that are good Akashas. They don't sleep very much. So by that association, I feel inspired to also reduce my sleep. Bhakta Dimitri and Govardhan Prabhu. Yeah, just mention that, just elaborate more on this point, that with everything in our devotional service, we always check with Guru Sadhu Shastra. So it's always been a mode of operandi for me to always try to check in with senior devotees and Shastra, of course, also, and Guru to see, try to help fine-tune ourselves with any issues really in our devotional service or need of inspiration or whatever. But for this one, it's a pretty formidable enemy to face. So do we have time for the person online, or did you?
Cold shower helps in the morning.
Oh yeah,
wake you up. Yeah, that's for
Yeah.
sure. That's my experience. Yeah, Vijay Krishna Prabhu, you're on.
Yes, Dravida Prabhu, thank you very much. You're
thank you
very
for your
kind.
patience, Prabhu.
Oh, Krishna Bhagavan Das Prabhu, no problem. Prabhu, my question is, if sleep prevents me from understanding what is going on in life, what sort of realization will I get from being awake?
You're asking, let me try to repeat your question. You're asking if I don't,
I can repeat my question. If sleep prevents me from understanding what is going on in life,
right, what is
and
wakefulness?
this quote I extracted from the verse, my question is, what sort of realization will I get from being awake?
Okay. I understand. It's a good question. So,
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Well, the whole point about reducing this propensity of sleeping is so that we can engage in devotional service. So that is the realization that we should actually be coming to. And, it's kind of mentioned as a theme of this discussion is that material life people, they want to sleep because they want to forget about their problems. Our material life is so challenging, so frustrating. As amazingly pointed out yesterday by Mars, that for someone to come to devotional service, they have to be sufficiently frustrated with material life. So just by osmosis in the material world, we become frustrated. So then we take shelter of these things: sleeping, eating, mating, defending. And so by giving up this sleeping, but particularly there's three phases of intelligence. There's the wakefulness, the sleep, and the deep sleep. So by performing devotional service, we gradually overcome these sleeping states of intelligence. So then our intelligence is in a wakeful state, then we can actually, it enables us to be more in the mode of goodness. We can understand more what Shastra is saying, or hear more knowledge, have more illumination of knowledge in our lives. And so then we can actually see that what is unfavorable for our advancement and the human mission, which is to perform devotional service. So that is the realization that we should be coming to while being awake. Utilizing this wakeful state is to be actually understanding the goal of life, understanding the science of self-realization. So it's not just being more awake so that, as was stated, to be better at a sport or to be a greater conqueror like Napoleon. So of course, devotees also have material jobs in the material world, and they're sustaining their families and things like that. And so, by waking up for Mangal Arti, waking up for the programs, chanting rounds, then one gets sufficient strength to be able to do duties in this world and be successful in the world. So, Hare Krishna. I don't know if that was...
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Wonderful answer to my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijay Krishna, Prabhu.
One final word.
You're welcome.
Yes, Prabhu, please.
Jeev Jago, we've all heard that song, right? It has two parts, actually. So Lord Chaitanya is chanting that to people who are supposedly awake, and but they're actually dreaming. Even in the wakeful state, the materialists are still dreaming. This is all over the Bhagavatam, especially the 11th canto. So if we try to escape from the daydream by sleeping more, just with a real actual physical sleep, then that's not the right solution. The solution is to, when we're actually awake, to associate with devotees and get all the information so we can actually wake up from the dream we've been in since we've been in the material world. So that there's the daydream and the night dream, Prabhupada says. And so both are dreaming in material life. But we're trying to wake up from the material dream, but to speak of actual sleep. So that's one added
thank you for that, Rabida Prabhu. Wonderful.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.